Hello and welcome to the webinar, Cultivating an Intentional Online Case Experience for Municipal Courts. My name is Roger Rand and I'm on the board of the National Association for Court Management. Creating an easy-to-use online case experience could be the solution your court needs to grow compliance rates while simultaneously weeding out unnecessarily long wait times at the courthouse. Today, you will hear from a court that is growing operational efficiencies. I'd like to thank Tyler Technologies for sponsoring today's webinar and introduce the General Manager of Municipal Justice for Tyler Technologies, Riley Miles. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat and I'll bring them to the presenter's attention. And Riley, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate that introduction. And also thank you to all of the folks at NACM that put on these webinars. We're excited to be here and grateful for the opportunity to talk about some things today. We do have a special guest with me, but before we get there, I want to kind of give a teaser about what we'll be discussing today. When we look at the world around us, it's changing. Roger and I were speaking just before we started today, talking about how technology just continues to evolve. We seem to be chasing it as fast as we can go, but it continues to outpace us. And I want you to think for a minute about how our lives have changed, even over the last, 5-10 years, but even over the last few years. My thoughts as I was thinking about this went to the grocery store experience. I remember when bagging the self-service line at the grocery store first started, I thought, no way. There is no way I'm going to go through and scan all my own groceries, put them in the bags. Like, I will mess that up. Something will go wrong. There's no way I'm going to be able to adjust to this. Well, it didn't take very long before that became my preference. I was like, well, I'm not waiting in that line. I'm going to go to the self-service place and I'm going to check myself out. Now, even fast forward just a year or two, sometimes we just order our groceries online and drive up and have it deposited in the back of the car. The world around us continues to change and we continue to try and keep up with the pace. When you think about paying your bills, online. I remember thinking, again, you can see maybe I'm tough to adjust to technology changing, but my first thought was, no way. There's no way I'm giving someone my credit card number or putting my credit card somewhere online to pay some bill somewhere. I'm going to write that check, make sure that it gets put in the envelope, take that envelope to the post office. I'm going to guarantee that that gets there and that bill is going to be paid. Now I don't even think twice. With auto bill pay, my credit card is probably tens, if not hundreds of different places online. And I just go day to day with complete peace of mind, knowing that those bills are going to be paid and it's going to be done in a safe, secure way. So there is so much around us that continues to change. And I think today gives us the opportunity to talk about how we're trying to make some of those changes apply to our everyday world in the judicial community. When I started thinking through this as well, I thought, what are some of the things that are out there? Just what are some of the things that we at Tyler Technologies explore? What are some of the things that all of you in the market are starting to see? And what are some of the tools that might be available? And my thoughts turned to some of the go-tos, the IVR, being able to call in and get updates on cases, maybe just even the courthouse hours, general pay information. Some IVR even gets deep enough to go through and make those payments via phone. Court hearings that are starting to happen online via one of our tools, like Virtual Court or via Zoom that we're using today. The tools continue to expand and enhance, and we start to see more and more of that happening. The online fines and fees, people being able to go and pay online and have different mechanisms to be able to have those taken care of. Those are starting to become more prevalent and really almost expected parts of what we do. And then notifications came to mind when I thought, how easy are we making it for some of these citizens to stay on top of what they have to do from the court perspective? And notifications came to mind, both in the form of text and of those automated voice calls that come up. So we'll probably talk a little bit about some of these today, but I want to introduce you to our special panel guest who's graciously joining us today from Littleton, Colorado, Danielle Trujillo. She is the court administrator in Littleton at the municipal court there. And Danielle, we're so grateful to have you on with us. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Riley. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. So I guess just to get to know a little bit more about, let's start with you first, and then we'll move into the court. But please tell us a little bit about your journey. What did you do before becoming a court admin? What led you there, and kind of how long have you been with the court there in Littleton?
Yeah, well, it's, all over the place is kind of what I would say. I graduated college with a math and computer science degree. So nobody ever thought that it would lead me here. I taught middle school math for a little bit. I worked for Parks and Rec for the city of Denver, but my mom worked in courts and my dad worked in government. And so, when an opportunity arose to be a part of Teen Court, which is a restorative justice program in a municipality here in Colorado, I jumped on it. I learned a lot. I left courts because I really wanted to put my data and analytic skills to use. So I joined the police department as an analyst, and it was the coolest job ever. I learned so much about data and mapping, and just how things worked together, and really about performance management. When I left there, an opportunity arose here at the Littleton Municipal Court to be a director within the city, and I had leadership aspirations. So I'm over at the courthouse again. I came in 2019, so I've been here almost 4 years, specifically at this courthouse. So I got to get my feet wet about 6 months, and then COVID happened. So
just that, huh?
Yeah. So the probation officer here always teases. She thinks I was behind it because all the maneuvers that I wanted to do to change what we used to call the courthouse in 1972. It was like a black and white courthouse here, right, from an old movie. It was so traditional. Everybody had to walk in. We were in a historic building. We had historic technology. Everybody had to come in person. We were very paper heavy. It felt long and antiquated. And so everything we decided to do really happened because we had funding, we had resources, and then we were able to really just kind of redefine the business we wanted to do here at the courthouse.
That's awesome. So, and I want to remind you that this session is recorded, but did I hear you say you claim to be the cause of the corona situation, of the whole pandemic?
I do not.
There's a lot of talk.
You cannot sue me. Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I got no money. I work in local government.
Well, we'll still leave it up in the air then, but I swear I heard something that you could be the cause. Well, thank you. We'll talk a lot about what's going on in Littleton and what you have been able to do and some of the lessons learned. But before we even do that, I want to ask you just a few fun questions, if that's okay, just to make this just a comfortable setting. So,
yeah, definitely.
Danielle, what's something you like to do, or what do you like to do outside of work when the courthouse closes? What do you like to do?
Yeah, well, I'm a mom of 3, so I don't know if that's a like or a need, right? Like, I got to do that. It's a responsibility, adulting, but it's fun. I have awesome kids. But much like everybody else, pickleball is super fun.
Nice.
I was a college athlete, so I try to still be athletic, and I snowboard. I love to play pickleball with my friends. And then, just hang out with friends, do dinners, things like that.
I love it. I'm trying to learn how to stay out of the kitchen. I just want to be in there all the time, and you can't do that. So I appreciate that. Okay, question number 2 then. Yeah. And maybe this goes along with pickleball, but maybe let's apply it everywhere. Mm-hmm. If you had a theme song every time you walked on the pickleball court or into a room or something, what would that be? What would that theme song be?
Good. I love that you asked this question, because this is what I ask others. What is their theme song? I totally have a theme song.
All right, what is it?
Lesia Cara. She's a younger artist, more pop, and it's called Wild Things.
Oh my, okay. Now we've got to ask, why would that be your intro song?
So it really talks about challenging the status quo, and that I don't want to fit in with others, that I want to stand out, and I want to be brave, and I want to take risk. And I want to surround myself with people that are willing to stand up for what's right, not what's popular.
Oh my goodness. I love that. So I'm just going to summarize as we go along. Started the pandemic for us, for sure.
Right.
you enjoy playing pickleball, and the theme song "Wild Things." I'm gonna have to check that one out. Okay,
Definitely.
last question then. Last kind of personal question.
Yeah.
And I know this is the one that's on everyone's mind.
Yeah.
If you could have any fictional character as your best friend, who would it be?
Wow, this is craziness.
Could be in a book, could be in movies, some fictional character though. They couldn't have been real.
They couldn't have been real. Wow, this is a tough one. I don't know. Like I kind of go on different spectrums, right? Like it's like Mr. Rogers, he's real, but that was a character, right?
Yeah.
Compared to like we were just watching Hunger Games, right? So I'm feeling and now why am I drawing a blank on her name? But she's a kick-ass person.
Oh,
like
Katniss.
Yeah,
Katniss
Everdeen.
Everdeen.
Thank you. Right? So standing up for what's right. I don't know. I think I need kind of that good perspective of both.
Yeah, I think you're onto something with Katniss Everdeen. That would be a good pairing.
I think zombies, come here then. I'm good.
I would lean towards maybe something from Top Gun, either Maverick or Goose, so that they could give me a ride in a fighter jet at some point, or even consistently. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that and getting to know you a little bit better. That's wonderful. All right. So now we'll dig into Littleton. Let's get to know Littleton, Colorado, just a little bit better. Is Littleton considered a small town, large metropolis, or something in between?
Yeah, so I think we're just breaking that barrier of 50,000 residents now when the census came out. So we get a little bit more funding. So that's neat. Yeah. So we're a suburb of Denver. So we're right just 10 minutes south of Denver. So we see a lot of traffic along the river. It's a thorough corridor to get from southern, kind of all of those southern parts of Colorado up to Denver. So we have some major streets that people are driving through every day. So a lot of traffic, but we have a great school district, and ultimately, we want to keep that line kind of small town feel where there's a lot of convenience and we're really listening to what our citizens want. But we want to be the latest and greatest too. Yeah.
Awesome. And I think a lot of people on the call today can relate to that. So just for us to get some context, how large is the staff at the municipal court, the judges, clerks, general staff?
Right. So we have 2 judges that are in here very regularly, and then 2 associates that just fill in whenever needed. And then we have 4 court clerks, a court supervisor, 1 probation officer, 1 city prosecutor that's full-time. So that's pretty much what our staff looks like.
Excellent. You sound like many of the courts that have joined us today, I'm sure. Thank you very much for sharing that. Okay, so let's talk about caseloads then. Like how big were your caseloads? And this is something I've been asking. You and I discussed this a little bit when we chatted before, but it's something I've started asking all of the courts across the country, all of our clients that we talk with. It's kind of interesting for me to be able to sit and gain a perspective of what the pandemic, what effect the pandemic had when it happened, and then how we're starting to come out, and in some cases how we're not necessarily coming out of the trends that happened there. So if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of an idea of what were your caseloads like pre-pandemic, then what happened during the pandemic, and then where are you now, and where do you kind of see that going?
Right. So pre-COVID, we were seeing about 10,000 cases annually. Most of those were traffic. We have parking, and then we have criminal citations too. Pre-pandemic, we did see domestic violence cases coming through our courthouse. We were still staffed at the same level. So we were completely understaffed, and we had just asked city council to give us more people because we weren't able to keep up with the caseload.
Which I think a lot of courts were going through at the time. It sounds familiar.
Definitely. And I think that was one of the key things that I learned working at the police department was they're not afraid to ask for budget line items. And it feels like courts play it safer. And that we don't ask for everything that we need. We kind of just go, no, we can get by, we can get by. So then during COVID, that happened, we saw about 2,000 cases that year. What we saw was kind of a social justice outcry by communities and community members saying policing needs to change a little bit. And I think that had an impact on our caseload for sure. But I think what it did, it brought to light a lot of things that some departments were already doing. And our department had already started this, having co-responders and really thinking about mental health in a different way. And should those result in tickets? The other thing we saw too was nobody was parking in our downtown areas. So you're not going to write any parking citations, right? And there's less traffic on the streets. People are no longer commuting to work. They're working from home. So the places where we were writing tickets before for safety concerns, those are not really there as much as they were prior to COVID. So it looks different. The landscape looks different now.
The case types have started changing. The types of violations that you're seeing.
Right.
Okay.
And so now we're saying closer to 2,500 cases a year since COVID. So that was 21, 22, and now we're into 23 on the same trend. They haven't added any more officers. They've restaffed their traffic team, but their focus is a little bit different now in the police department than it was before. And everything doesn't result as a ticket. We no longer see those domestic violence cases. We felt like they were better served going to the county because they had more resources than we did for those cases to be successful. So we rethought what we were doing business-wise and why we were making the choices we were making to put certain case types into the municipal court and what would be better served at the county resource-wise.
Interesting. Okay. So, I mean, even when you look at your caseload, it's bounced back a tiny bit, but I mean, you're still a quarter of what you were before. So what do you see? Where do you see that going? What trends do you think are likely to happen? Because I think, just to say, Danielle, your situation is not unique. The clerks and the administrators that I've spoken with across the country, so many of them are in similar places. We've seen a handful maybe, that are 80, 90, maybe 100% of what they were pre-COVID. But boy, by and large, people are still far less than what they were handling before. So what is your instinct? What does your experience tell you about what may happen in Littleton moving forward?
Yeah, I feel like this is our new norm, and we're going to focus our resources in different ways. We want to be more proactive about what we're doing and how we're handling incidents within the community. We've relied more heavily on mediation, restorative justice programs in the schools. So we're just thinking about it differently, that a ticket should really result at the end of after we've exhausted every other effort. So I just feel like we're just looking at it differently than we have before. So I don't see it changing. I feel like we're really focusing on different community efforts.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I like that. I like that perspective, targeting kind of what is most impactful and where we can have the biggest footprint. Seems to make a lot of sense. That resonates with me as a citizen anyway. Well, thank you. Okay, I feel like I know a bit more about your trends and where you're going. So to build on that, and then really to just catapult us into the topics today, I want to take an opportunity to really focus in on two main goals for this discussion. I think the first is creating that new experience and that whole cultivating that whole online experience for the citizens as it pertains to the people of Littleton, and then for everyone on the phone, everyone that's in the jurisdiction of the court in which you work. And then the second one is really the experience you've had and the experience that I think many are maybe on the precipice of either deciding, maybe they've already done it, maybe they haven't quite yet. And that is improving that online experience for the courts themselves, moving from the traditional either on-premise or files in filing cabinets type of operation to what we call the cloud. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means when we say it, because I think I probably said it and you probably had a certain thought and I have a thought, and then we have 100 and something other thoughts that are on the call. But we'll talk a little bit about what the cloud is and what we mean by that. And then just kind of the things you've learned along the way, helpful tips and tricks, what to avoid, the things that kind of you gain some experience from that we might all be able to learn from as we talk through this. So first off, I think it's no question courts across the country are starting to adopt that idea that technology is advancing, it's moving forward, and we want to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form. Some are taking really aggressive approaches and trying to stay on that cutting edge. Others are a little bit later adopters, and they say, we want to see how this plays out, and then we'll make a decision at that point. The analogy that comes to mind is the cell phone. I've got a brother that has to be on whatever the very newest cell phone with the newest operating system, et cetera, et cetera. And then you look at people like my mom, and she still just if she could have just a dial-up phone, she would be thrilled with that. So there's, and I don't mean to say that, in an age breakdown type of scenario, but we all have different perspectives on technology and where we want to go. So when it comes to you, what tools have you guys put in place? What do you have in place now, or what have you done over the history there to improve that online presence and experience for the citizens?
Yeah, it really started with us having a lot of conversations about user experience. So many times courts, people don't willingly come to court, right? They're told they have to come to court. So we don't think of them as users like you would a customer at a restaurant or for other services that the cities are offering. So people have kind of always put it as like, well, you have to follow this one path because you have to be here and we're going to put you in this path and this is what you have to do today, which I felt was really unfair, number one, very confrontational for my employees, number two, right? It's hard to keep short staff because they're constantly in predicaments where there's a lot at stake and there's a lot of headbutting and people don't like that. Yeah.
They just rarely see someone come to the window saying, I'm so happy to be here. I'm glad that you're here. Here's my payment information. Thank you so much for the experience. Yeah.
Yep. So for us, it was really talking about what do the users look like that are coming in through our door? And then how do we create an experience for each of them to take a different pathway? So like you, I was never going to do online payments, right? And then suddenly now I'm getting a text message, hey, your bill's due, click it, pay the bill, you're done. So convenience is everything for me right now. I ordered groceries before COVID happened, right? When everybody got on board with that, I was upset because now my time slots were limited.
Yeah. Good for you for being an early adopter.
Yeah. So there were some things that were already happening in the world around us. And when I came into the courthouse in 2019, we did not have online payments. You could not call and make a payment over the phone. You physically had to come to our building or mail us a check, right? I don't even have checks. Right. That meant I was going to have to take time off of work to come and pay a ticket. And for me, I recognize too, that there's users out there that time off of work is not paid time off of work. That means I can no longer buy groceries for my family if I have to take a half day to come and pay a court ticket. So we wanted to really think about each of these users and be able to have an experience where they could choose what they wanted their experience to look like. If you wanted that traditional experience where you're going to walk into the courthouse, you wanted to talk to the prosecutor, you wanted to talk to the judge, and you wanted to go through that traditional route, we were going to have that for you. But if you wanted to have the easy, it text me, here's what you can pay. Do you want to accept your plea agreement? Yes, click, pay, I'm done, here's your receipt. We wanted to create that too. And so we wanted to allow users to decide what they wanted, but we wanted to make sure we had everything in place so that could happen. So that started to become kind of our cry or our light at the end of the tunnel. Then we got to get there. And what are the steps that we're going to take? And a lot of it had to do with, we've got to change our practices, number one, and how we're looking at the cases and really put our best plea forward first, notify people when there's options for them, and then give them the opportunity to resolve their case, whether it be online or in person. So you have to have some technology to do that.
So you talked about that hybrid approach that I think all courts have to apply. We can't just say we are online exclusively now. Good luck. You have to have that in person. So what have you seen? What's the percentage? Do you think it's 50-50 people that come to the courthouse versus they'll pay online? Is it 80-20? What's your take on that?
Yeah, we're 30-70.
Okay.
Yeah. So we still have some users that want to come in. They still want to pay at the counter. We see what happens a lot with our juvenile defendants. Their parents still want them to go through that traditional experience, and they want to bring them in and have them go in front of a judge. So a lot more juveniles are coming in. What we see is usually after their first appearance, if it's a case that's going to go on for a little while, that they want to take it to trial.
Mhm.
Usually their first experience may be by phone or here in person, and then the subsequent hearings may be virtual until they get to that trial place, and then it's in person. And
Mhm.
then anybody that has to come in for review hearings. So after they've already disposed the case, but they had some sentence agreements that they need to complete, most of those are all done virtually. So we don't see any of those defendants having to leave work to come back to talk with a judge again. Instead, all of those are happening virtually.
That's amazing. How has that transition been, moving to more of a virtual hearings type of situation?
Yeah, it's amazing. What we've seen is that there's less wait time for our users, number one. They're happier because they can potentially stay at work and just take a 10-minute break. The process then for them to check in, and then we call them back when we're ready for them to come through their hearing. When that happens, it's, 10, 15 minutes for the entire thing to occur. So they didn't spend hours at the courthouse having an experience where they, had to delay everything else in their life. Instead, this kind of fit into what they needed to do. What we also see, they're happier. It's easier for them to pay, right? Because we send them immediately to say, here's where you can pay. So we're seeing more on-time payments or immediate payments right after. And then afterwards, we're seeing more compliance. So people are more willing to get what they need to get done because they see that we can be more flexible with them.
Interesting. When you say more compliance, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Do you know at the top of your head what that looks like? Like how much of an increase do you think you saw in compliance by having these tools in place?
So one thing that we really focused on was what was happening with our compliance rates was they were spanning out over long periods of time, years, right? So cases were taking years to resolve. So it wasn't this traditional, like we can get through it in 30 days. What we saw is when we focused more efforts on the front end, right, with notifications and getting people to come into court and getting through their court hearing, traffic cases are now down to 30 days. People are accepting their pleas well before their court date. So the amount of cases on our dockets just shrink completely over that course of that 30 days, that we only have a handful of people that actually want to come in or have to come in for their court hearing because there's restitution involved or something like that. So we're really trying to front load giving those pleas ahead of time. Then the second thing was for those criminal cases, they still have to appear, but the pleas are sent to them ahead of time. So it gives them time to process if they want to accept those pleas or not. So what we're seeing is more acceptance of the pleas immediately. So again, those 30 days, we're coming more into compliance within that time frame of 30 days. And then we really thought about how are we structuring our sentencing and condense that time frame too. So we're closing cases within 6 months, which is huge for compliance. And if they can be closed in 3 months, then we do it. So we're not trying to extend timeframes anymore. If you actually come in at your 3-month marker and you've completed everything, the judge will close it for you immediately.
That's awesome.
So,
and to give us context, so where were you before that? So I think you kind of alluded to technology has really made a huge impact. 6 months sounds awesome. What was it before that though? What has it gone from to that 6 months?
Yeah, we were talking about at least 12 months to 18 months. Almost all of our cases were being closed within 12 to 18 months. So when you're running some of those disposition rate or the time frame reports, right? Everything was downloaded that it was after the 90-day marker where we were seeing the bulk of everything start to be disposed or closed. We've totally shifted that within the first 30 days, the bulk of our cases are being closed there.
Awesome. That's amazing. And of course, situations are going to differ from court to court and from place to place. But I think we could all expect some improvements to be made along the way. So you talked about payments, online payments, and how that's been effective, notifications that seem to be going out that have helped with that compliance situation, virtual hearings, moving things to more of an online experience. How did you prioritize these things? Like if there's a court out there or on the call today that's like, well, yeah, this all sounds great, but I don't even know where to start. Where do you dip your toe in, or do you just dive head first and go for it? What's your thoughts there? What was your experience?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, when I came on board and people were calling in and saying, oh, the only way I can pay is by check, right? My first thing was I got to get online payments. And that took me 6 months. not because of lack of desire or the contract was hard or anything like that. It was getting everybody on board at the city that we were ready to move forward in that way. We were really stuck in 1972 and getting finance and IT and everybody understand how could we make this happen? Like, how would the integration work? We were using our legacy system at the time that was antiquated. It was going to feel bulky. How much was this going to cost? Did we see payments going up? There was a lot of politics involved in it, which seemed kind of crazy to me. Everybody else around us was doing it. Why couldn't we get there? So once I was able to get online payments on board, that actually helped me start the conversations about we need new technology all the way around and why it was failing. And what I actually did was had people come over to the courthouse to kind of watch court and see how bad it was, right? To see how long people were waiting, stand behind the clerk and watch it taking them 10 minutes to process a credit card. And it's the spinning wheel of death. And you're like, I'm sorry, I can't do anything. We just got to wait here, right? It's taking forever to print out a piece of paper. And then we got to hand everybody papers all the time. We're moving files, like literally physically moving things. And there's just stacks of paper everywhere. It felt, even if you are organized, still a little bit chaotic and disarray, right?
Of course,
And the amount of work that was going into that every week to just pull off court, right? And we were holding court 3 to 4 times a week. So it just felt like chaos all the time. My clerks would easily say, like, they came to work and they felt like they got nothing accomplished and went home and there was still so much work to be done. So it just felt like we had to basically push over the entire apple cart and start from scratch. And when given the opportunity, we did. And so we invested in technology. We decided that going hosted was the best option for us to really be able to say, if the technology is not working, can we leave it? And will we get what we want out of this? And then sky's the limit, right? So I was like, I want it all. Give me everything that you can give me when I talked with Tyler, because I wanted the latest and greatest, and I wanted to be able to take the steps we wanted to in order to get where we were. The implementation felt heavy for certain people, but it was okay. There was light at the end of the tunnel. This will change how we do business. And we rethought every process we were doing. It felt overwhelming at times, right? But we got through it and we never looked back. And everybody to this day now swears by it, that they are so glad we're in a different place. It feels like a completely different job than the one they had 2 years ago.
That's amazing. And you hit on so many key points. I think some of us might get a little bit of paralysis thinking where to start, what to do. I don't know. And your idea of flipping over the apple cart, inviting people in to experience some of the bottlenecks and the issues that you're trying to overcome in order to get stakeholder investment and buy-in is huge. I mean, even as a vendor, that's what we try and do with our product staff. We want them in the courthouses, seeing what's going on, identifying the problems that staff are having, and how can we help solve that from a technological standpoint. To your exact point, when it comes to funding and why should we allocate budget funds toward this project or this idea? Well, let me show you. Let me come in and see what this is like, because hopefully not a lot of us on the call are frequenting the municipal court and find ourselves there often, but we don't get to see kind of the inner workings of the problems. And that's not just limited to like the citizens. I mean, that's general city staff, the mayor, the people that are kind of a part of it, of that budgetary process, don't really get a good idea of some of the problems and issues that you're seeing. You said rethinking your entire process. That's kind of something that sounds very intriguing to me. What were maybe just a couple, 1 or 2 of the things that you identified that you were like, okay, we need to really change this, and then maybe what have you seen the biggest impact from? Like, what has been impactful in changing the way that you were doing it versus how you're doing it now?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things we had to really do is ask the question why? Like, why are we doing this? And so, what are the basic things you have to accomplish at court, right? Like you've got to check people in. So that was one of the big things. And, when we were going through training before we went live with the system, we had a full week of training of just how do you use this system, right?
Yeah.
What we did with our business analysts is we took that opportunity. They would show us something like, okay, here's the process. Here's how you do it. Click here, do this, do that. What we did then is, and we would leave them on, right? And we did this all virtually. We'd all get together and we were all in the same room. I go, okay, let's talk about check-in. How are we going to check people in court? And we really just started like from when they walk in the door, what does it look like? Where will we click? What screens will we see? What is our script that we're going to say? Who's going to be talking to them, right? And so we really just, from the very basic, like each maneuver through all of the processes, what will it look like? And we took that week to redefine every single process. What we knew is it wasn't going to be one and done. We were going to feel a lot of hiccups that first week when we went live. And so how would we adjust? Ew, that's not working. So we had to be willing to also be agile enough to work through some of those challenges. Was that just a one-off? Did you see this happening a lot? Maybe this isn't working. That was too many clicks. Let's rethink what we need to do here. We had to have everybody on board with just being open-minded about this isn't going to be how it lives forever. This may be how it lives forever, but it may not.
Yeah, but we're gonna try
have
it.
a lot of iterations. And we're gonna try it. And all we can do is try it. And it's okay if it fails. We'll figure it out. We'll adjust as we go, because not everything's going to fail at once. We're going to have little hiccups as we go. And that's what we did. And I think part of that, for sure, the check-in piece was really critical for us to get people to understand that they had options. And it was really hard because the city switched to a new phone system at the same time we went live. So
of course, what could go wrong?
Yeah, a lot of things. Phones were being routed in the wrong direction, right? They were calling down at the city center. Somebody else was getting the phone call. So then they're rerouting them, so there were a bunch of hiccups that we couldn't have anticipated that were going to happen, but we just kind of had to roll with it as it happened and adjust, like I said. And there were lots of iterations. So even now to this day, when something is not working well for us, we go, oh, what's going on there? I thought we had this in place, right? If we don't, then let's look at it. And we bring the whole team in together to say, how are you doing it? Or where is the hiccup happening? Because this doesn't seem right, or we're missing something over here. And then with all the changes that are going on in the state of Colorado alone, I'm sure in other states too, there's a lot of new legislative mandates. So we're constantly having to update our processes, let's just say for court sillings, because things have changed now that we automatically have to sill certain things after they've been dismissed. So we have to work new processes in, right? So this is not a one and done. This is going to be iterative as long as we keep improving.
Oh, thank you for that. I mean, it's easy. Well, maybe easy for people could be in two different camps. It could be easy to say, oh, I'm just going to do this. And of course we're going to figure it out as we go. And then there's others that are like, I don't want to figure it out as we go. I want to know exactly what we're getting into top to bottom, front to back. And it sounds like you were able to find kind of a balance between those two of saying, all right, we have a plan, but we're also going to learn as we go and we're going to adjust accordingly. I think that's an awesome way to approach it. So we are going to shift gears into the next topic. But before we do, if someone were on the line and they're thinking, okay, I need to revamp my processes and maybe just using the same system that I am using, but I need to change something, or I need to enhance my online presence. I need to do something. What would you encourage them to make sure that they do? And then on the flip side, is there anything that comes to mind that you'd say, oh, try and avoid this at all costs?
Yeah. One thing that we did, we really thought about our intentions and our impact, right? So this was brought up to us in a class that we took about ethics in government, and it really resonated with us. Like, our intentions are good. We're putting things online, but if nobody's going there, it doesn't know how to use them, then the impact isn't what don't line up with
just
your intention.
Minimal.
Exactly. And so some of the things that you're going to do, first off, the clerks are really they really steer us in what needs to change. Is this working for you? You're doing the work daily. Is this working for you? The other stakeholder that has a lot of input and like, this isn't working, or have we thought about this, is our judge, right? So is this working for you? Do we need to adjust anything? How are things flowing for you? Does this feel good? Like, because their ultimate goal is they want to get everybody in and out of the courtroom or in and out of the hearings. And so they're looking for very specific things too. So we're constantly asking why are we doing this? So I think that's the starting place. Like, why do we do this? And asking and really focusing on the things that you have to accomplish. And then some of the steps that you're taking, like, why are you doing them? Can you create a different process in order to really get to what needs to get done and make it easier for staff and employees? I think the other part of the question too is, don't just do change for sake of change, right? Like, just to kind of throw it all up and change everything. That's overwhelming for people. We've had a couple of tough years, right? Where a lot of things changed around us. So there is some really good security about stability. And so if you can let things live for a little bit and try them and let them live and say, is this working over time? Then you can kind of go, okay, here's where we make adjustments. So we had to shift a lot at the beginning to make those quick adjustments, but then we really let the system live. So last year, we didn't make a whole bunch of changes. We just really got really comfortable and became experts in the system. And then this year, again, every year we do a SWOT analysis to go, what are our strengths and our weaknesses and our opportunities? Where are there areas that we can improve upon? And if not, and it's working well, let's leave it alone.
Oh, I love that approach. Start with the why. I love that. Get stakeholder buy-in. Find who this is going to impact internally that we can appeal to, and then avoid jumping to conclusions too soon. Learn as you go, but don't make huge moves. Don't steer in big turning circles, but keep a good line and then adjust as you're there. I think it's a great impactful way to go about any large project. Okay, so now you talked about this just a little bit about your hosted experience, and I think a lot of times these two things go hand in hand. Like sometimes it's like, okay, well, now that we're moving to new technologies, if I'm going to adopt that, it's almost the expectation of the market now. Well, of course, that's going to be in an online presence, and that could be hosted in like the county or state sponsored data centers. It could be hosted in some enterprise level solution like AWS or Microsoft Azure. There's a lot of different flavors, but I think even on our call today, and if you just look at the landscape across the country, we still have courthouses that have cabinets full of files, and we have others that are storing their data in like secure, locked down, 24/7 monitored warehouses that are storing all of that important information. And then we have everything in between, right? There's the full gamut of everything there. So when we talk about the cloud, I usually shrug that off of, okay, it's hosted somewhere like an Amazon or something, but there's obviously different flavors of what that means. So in saying that, maybe talk to us just a little bit about your experience, where you came from. You said you were using your legacy system at some point, and then you decided, okay, we're gonna flip over the apple cart, we're gonna start everything fresh. And then as you came to see that, you're like, hosted was the choice for us. So maybe a little bit of the why behind that, and what moved you to go that route. And then I'll fire off probably a number of different questions, but let's start there.
Yeah. We traditionally were hosted. We had the server. We're, like I said, a smaller organization. We have about 350 employees. So our IT team is not huge. We don't have somebody that is specifically assigned to courts. So we don't have just an IT person that helps us with things.
And just for clarity, Danielle, you said traditionally you were hosted and then you went on hosted on premise, right? That's what you're saying.
I'm sorry. Traditionally we were, yes, on site. Exactly. So we had big servers. Those had to be replaced. They had warranties. They had to be replaced. There were security issues with those servers. We saw things going on around the country that, that there were cyber attacks and just different things that were going on. So it rose the question. I had actually been working in the police department prior here to here. And one of the things that came up was they needed a new record management system. So they decided to go into a county system, again, was going to be hosted by the county. So just like you talked about, the city had already made maneuvers to kind of see, well, what kind of resources does that support us with? And then it actually has less impact on internal resources for IT. We were making the switch to Office 365, again, hosted. We weren't going to have things on every desktop. Things were going to be in the cloud. So when we were able to really talk through what's going on with this new court management system, one of the things I said was, well, if we're doing this across the city, why wouldn't I? Number one, I don't want to be left behind, right?
Yeah.
If it's more secure, if it's going to require less resources, then what's the downfall? And so some of it looks like, well, it felt like a heftier, price tag every year. But when we did the math, it was not a heftier price tag. It was actually cheaper to implement. And then at that 5-year mark, it was kind of a break even, whether we had to invest in it internally or externally. And so we were, there was not any downfall to it in my mind. Why would we not go to the cloud? Why would we not try this? I think the major selling point for me was, having had relationships with lots of software companies, there comes to a place where usually software companies stop developing their programs and you get left behind. But then you're stuck with that software because you have everything on site, it's in all of your computers. In order to shift everything is going to cost you a huge chunk of change. And I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to be agile and say, hey, if we're not happy with this product anymore and they're not advancing it the way we need them to, then we can walk away when our contract is done. So it really forced us to think about who are we partnering with, and are they going to continue to advance as the court continues to advance, because there's going to be a lot of new products out. And so it gave us the opportunity to choose a vendor that was going to continue to grow, but we felt really safe and secure. A lot of the questions that came up from court staff was, well, what happens when we can't connect to the internet? What happens when they go down if we lose the service? And I was like, okay, let's think through those things, right? I've been with the city now 9 years. We've had 2 outings of internet, and it was because lines were actually cut because of outside projects going on, and a line was cut. They didn't disrupt service in any way. And when it happened, we were like, okay, I guess we're not doing this today. We couldn't do any work. It didn't matter if it was just court work, right? Because we couldn't get onto any application because everything required us to have the internet. So that was the only time. And then we've never run into the problem over the last 2 years either of never having service, but there's been that the service has been down. So we couldn't connect to our Tyler products, to municipal justice. So neither of those things have come to fruition the entire time that we've had it. So it's kind of one of those fears and one of those anxieties that hasn't happened to us yet.
Man, well, I mean, we're very grateful for you guys, Danielle, and for your confidence in us and for choosing us as your vendor. I mean, I agree. Like I'll just say this, any vendor that's worth their salt should be progressing their products along. That's why we do what we do, is to take that burden from the cities and the counties, bear that burden of developing and maintaining and enhancing the software over time so that it doesn't become stagnant and something that the county or city has built that just doesn't get the attention that we can try and give it. So that's important to us. And I think your experience is exactly what we're setting out to do. There's a little bit of, so I appreciate you talking about what do you do when you lose the internet in a hosted environment? And to your point, there is, you basically hang a sign on the window and say, sorry, we're out. But you did mention, I mean, whether it's your case management system, in this case, Municipal Justice from Tyler, or whether it's like a Microsoft 365 or so many products are in that situation now. There is a certain sense of reliability that comes along with it, right? I mean, maybe talk just a little bit about that. You said there were those 2 times, but in the day-to-day operation, what do you see? Do you see the system slowing down? Do you see that there's times when you're just like, I can't use this. I wish it was hosted in a server under my desk. What's that experience been like?
Yeah, it hasn't. What we see is that those updates happen during our downtimes. So we're constantly being updated with new applications or the updates that Tyler is sending out, and we have to do no work. So it requires no IT resources in order for us to stay up to date and make sure that all the patches are there and everything that we need, which is huge, because before we had to schedule that time and everybody has to be willing to participate in that update, right? We
Yeah.
no longer have to replace servers. We don't have to think about those security risks in the same way. So again, that was a huge IT lift that we don't have to ask them for. When something is going on, we don't reach out to IT first. We actually call the Tyler help desk. So we're not constantly bombarding them with questions. So there hasn't been an instance where we've really had to, in our old system, we would have to call IT and ask them, can you restart the server? Something's going on. We've restarted all our computers. This isn't working, right? We're not connecting. There were all kinds of things that were constantly breaking, including a lot of our integrations, right?
Yeah.
So if the police department got an update on their system for their ticket writing software, suddenly now they wouldn't communicate anymore. And we were constantly having all these things that would break that we'd have to fix. And just out of nowhere, shoot, now we got to fix this. No wonder why it's not working. We didn't get any tickets today. And that would take IT time. We have not run into any of those issues. And PD, again, hosted as well. So those things, it's like they talk seamlessly and we're not running into the same problems that we used to before. And overall, it improves the capacity of us being able to ask the people that we need to ask when something does break, the actual experts that know what's going on with it.
Oh, I love that. And I agree. Like my experience, not only with our software, but just with, cloud hosted software in general, my experience has been extremely positive. It's very reliable. It's always up. It's always on. They seem to have put things in place. And then knowing, just to give everyone some perspective from the vendor's seat, I mean, we have diagnostic tools that are actively watching all of these environments. Like they give us reporting to almost be predictive, to where if something even looks like it may become an issue down the road, we get those notifications, and we have staff that are trained and specialized in going in and making sure we avoid those. So it's definitely something that I like hearing the feedback that it's working well on, and knowing that the experience that I have is similar to yours, Danielle. So I'm gonna summarize, and then I'm gonna ask just one more question, and then Roger, we'll open it up for any of the questions that came in online. But to summarize, so we've discovered the cause of the pandemic, which was Danielle. So that was for sure. You're an avid pickleball player, which we love and appreciate. When we're doing a certain project or trying to kick off these initiatives, getting that stakeholder buy-in is important, and finding the people that it's going to impact, starting with the why, I think is significant. And I love that point. I love also you saying don't change for change's sake. Like let's make sure that we're attacking the highest impact, the highest priority items. Where could we as a court benefit the most, and where could the people, the citizens that are coming in already disgruntled, how could we improve their experience and take a little bit of that edge off potentially? I think that's a great place to start. And then I think you just gave a rousing testimonial of how a hosted experience has absolutely no issues whatsoever, ever. Which I'll say probably isn't the case. People shouldn't take that home from the session today, but I agree with you. I think it's a very reliable place to go. It's no longer kind of the cutting, bleeding edge. It's more just the foundation and expectation of how things should be working. So I would ask you, like, as kind of a closing piece, if there's some of us out here or some of us on the call, or that will look at this later on, that are maybe considering moving to a hosted environment, what would you say to either encourage or discourage them, if there's anything that you'd say?
Yeah, what I would say is it allowed us to really focus our efforts on serving customers in a different way. And so because we were able to really focus on user experience and allow customers to decide how they wanted their experience to go, those customers that want self-service are happy customers because they can easily get through the process and have a self-service option without having to be disgruntled with you. Right? And then the second piece would be that those people that want the in-person experience, because we didn't have to deal with somebody who was upset about it being overwhelming and outdated, and that they didn't know what was going on, they come up to the window and actually are very grateful. And so our clerks are able to walk them through the process now because we have the time. We're not spending our efforts on pushing paper and getting through processes and worried about technology breaking every, all the time and the computer going down and having to restart. Those aren't things that we worry about anymore. Instead, we're able to do our work seamlessly and focus on really giving good customer service and giving and having the ability to allow users to go online and kind of pick the kind of service that they want. And that's huge. It's really changed the game for us.
Oh, thank you, Danielle. That's fantastic. And thank you for the discussion today. It's been absolutely my pleasure to be a part of this with you. Roger, did we have any questions that came in online that we should address?
Yes, there are a couple of questions. The first question is, what is the specific Tyler solution being used?
Yes, so we use Municipal Justice. So we're version 10, and we are hosted.
Thank you. And, Adam from Centennial Municipal Courts is asking Danielle, does Littleton use Tyler's text message notification system? If so, have you noticed an impact on FTAs and payments? Any downside that you have experienced?
Yeah, we do use the notification system and we love it. We definitely see that when those notifications go out in the state of Colorado, so Centennial already knows this too, the state of Colorado actually required, there's a new mandate on state courts that you must notify the defendant 4 times prior to their hearing. So we really worked into our system just automatic ways of notifying defendants those 4 times before, because we want to do the best practice and what's required of us. Even though it's not mandated for municipal courts, we still wanted to do that best practice and see if we got results. We have seen anybody that are getting those text messages, they're definitely more likely to be in compliance. Our FTA rates have gone down drastically. Where we're seeing FTAs is where we don't have a good cell phone number. Maybe it's an unhoused defendant or something like that, where we weren't able to get in touch with them. And so we have different platforms in order to try to do that in person because we recognize the challenges there. But those people that have reminders about court, if they need to reschedule, because we put that on there, we give them access to do that. That's huge. So we've seen that we are not issuing nearly as many warrants for FTAs for those people coming in. And we definitely see that people are paying their tickets when they get those notifications. So with our traffic docket specifically, we're getting more payments immediately before those tickets even get to a place where they have to be seen. So they're accepting that online resolution or that payment and plea agreement prior to ever having to come to court. So that's definitely gone up, and we're much more in the 70s now. The last time I checked, it was like 72% that when we're sending out a notification, somebody's clicking, and I think it was within that 15-day period. There's a really cool report within Tyler 2 that tells you how many people are responding to your notifications and when.
Great, thank you. One more quick question. Did you need to change the way you do business with any of your court business partners as well? You talked a lot about how you changed the way you did business with your customers, with the public, but how about your court business partners?
Yes, so we did actually. So part of us taking on a new system was to include the prosecutor in the system in order to allow them to have more access. And so we're able to actually put the pleas directly into the system, and we created a pathway or 2 users within our system for the prosecutor to have access. The other thing we did with our online site was for the public defender. So they have a great tool that allows attorneys or visiting or defense attorneys, but for us more specifically, it was about our public defender, allowing him access into his cases so he could see judgments, he could see due dates, he could see if there were still outstanding payments, almost so he could do his own self-service, but allow him more access to see judges' notes and things like that. So we did change how we did business with some of our stakeholders and partners.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So moving on, I don't see any additional questions, but I do want to mention a couple of things. Everyone who's online, there's a lot of municipal court participation today, and I want to remind people that there is a NACM committee dedicated to the municipal courts, and I'm putting a link to that in the chat right now. And that is the State Association Subcommittee, and please feel free, and you can follow that link to get to the site that tells you the dates of those. I also want to remind everyone that the NACM annual conference is coming up in July. It's July 9th through the 13th in Tampa. And you can find out more information about that on our website. I encourage you to come. We are expecting that to sell out. So if you are interested, please take a look and get registered as soon as possible. And then what was the last slide there? And of course, we encourage you to join NACM. If you join NACM, we do have some exclusive membership benefits. We have publications that come out monthly and quarterly. There's opportunities for mentorships, and there are training opportunities. We are an educational association. We are the largest court association in the country with 1,600 members strong. And I encourage you to join NACM today. And again, thank you, Tyler Technologies. Thank you, Danielle. This was a very informative webinar and very well done. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.